But when you are doing whatever you want and disregarding rules and laws, you're going to get yourself caught up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the story of Trump 2.0 is essentially throwing up as many possible disruptive, even radical proposals, ordering the government to do things it's never attempted to do before, and basically kind of seeing what sticks and what comes out of it. I have to say that clip is a remarkable clip. First of all, Ted Cruz is not exactly oozing sincerity there, it seems to me. Secondly, and importantly, Katie, you notice he doesn't enumerate what these so-called conservative victories are. And I think that's because it's not at all clear which, if any, of these conservative victories, and they're not really conservative as much as radical victories, are going to stand. And this goes to your point about the legal fights and especially the Justice Department being in the crosshairs of all of it. We're going to see whether Republican senators, including Ted Cruz, really have the appetite to go ahead and confirm Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Todd Blanche, in July. He's supposed to have his hearing to be the new attorney general. It would be a remarkable thing, I think, if they were to go ahead, in part because of that Epstein mess that you alluded to.
So friends, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. appears to have taken the word transparency very seriously, exactly as Congress wrote it into the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And now, U.S. District Judge Emmett Sullivan has ordered Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche to do what that law requires, to be transparent. That order came after the court found that Blanche, in his official capacity, had violated the federal law requiring the public release of the vast majority of Justice Department records connected to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and their network.
Is giving the Trump administration 1 week to release more of the Epstein files or explain why it's keeping them secret. The D.C. judge's ruling is in response to a lawsuit brought by an independent journalist claiming the Justice Department has not fully complied with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That's the law passed by Congress last November requiring a broad public release of the records. The judge ordered the government to remove redactions from certain documents, including exposing the people who sent and received emails referring to a so-called torture video and alleged sexual activity with young women, including minors. The order also covers interview notes with a woman who made unverified claims she was sexually abused by President Trump when she was a minor. Again, the department has the option to explain why it's choosing not to release certain info. On top of that, the judge wants the Justice Department to produce a log identifying every redaction it has made to the published files, which is required by law. The agency has so far released more than 3 million pages of Epstein records.
This is a major legal development. It is a victory for the rule of law, for the public's right to know, and most importantly, it is a victory for the victims who have waited far too long for the full truth surrounding Epstein, Maxwell, and everyone who may have helped protect or enable that criminal operation. Let's begin with the new reporting. Politico's headline says it clearly. Todd Blanche conceded violating law on Epstein files, judge finds. According to that report, the Justice Department has effectively conceded that it is violating the law Congress passed last November, a law requiring the public release of most records related to Jeffrey Epstein. Judge Sullivan said Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche essentially admitted the violation by failing to meaningfully respond to the allegations raised by independent journalist Katie Fang in her lawsuit seeking broader access to the records. Those records include material connected to allegations involving President Donald Trump.
There are growing questions this hour about dozens of records that appear to be missing from the Epstein files. According to a CNN review, those records in question are FBI witness interviews, and 3 of the missing interviews are related to a woman who accused both Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump of sexually assaulting her decades ago. The top Democrat on the Oversight Committee is among those expressing concern.
I went to the DOJ file search room yesterday to look for these documents that are in the manifest document, and they should be in there, and they're not there. These documents relate to a survivor that has made serious allegations about the president. What's important now is that the DOJ explain to us why were those documents removed.
Judge Sullivan wrote that the Attorney General does not respond substantively to the arguments raised against him. In other words, the court found that Blanche failed to give a real answer, and because of that failure, the judge concluded that the Attorney General had conceded he was in violation of the act. Then the court went further. Judge Sullivan issued a preliminary injunction giving Blanche 1 week to release certain names and other information that DOJ has redacted from the millions of pages of Epstein-related files, or provide a much more detailed explanation for why those materials are still being withheld. That is the key point. The court is not accepting vague excuses. The court is not allowing DOJ to simply black out names and move on. The court is saying, release the information or explain exactly why the law allows you to keep it hidden.
Welcome to the News Hour. Late this afternoon, the Justice Department began releasing thousands of pages of files and communications related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The new documents include photos, call logs, court filings, and more, many of them heavily redacted. Our White House correspondent Liz Landers joins us now. So Liz, you and our team have been reading through these documents. What stands out so far?
Well, there are thousands of documents that have been released today. That is far fewer than the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche had said, and he has said that this will take a few weeks. What we have noticed in today's release so far is that this is divided into several different categories, and much of the new information is coming out in what is the Department of Justice disclosure category. We've seen a redacted masseuse list with more than 250 names, all redacted. We've also found at least one of the grand jury documents in there from the United States versus Epstein. That is key. We have not gone through that document yet, but that is certainly something we will be looking through.
Some of the records covered by the order include FBI interview notes involving a woman who made allegations connected to Epstein and Trump. Because those are allegations, they must be treated carefully and legally. But the existence of those records is precisely why transparency matters. The public has a right to know what the government has, what it is withholding, and why. Judge Sullivan's memorandum opinion runs 48 pages, and it lays out the legal framework in detail. The case is Katie Phang versus Todd Blanche in his official capacity as Acting Attorney General of the United States. The court explains that Congress passed the Epstein Spy Transparency Act with near unanimous support in November 2025. President Trump signed it into law on November 19, 2025. The law requires the Attorney General, with only limited exceptions, to make publicly available a searchable and downloadable database of unclassified DOJ files related to the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and their associate.
There are tons and tons of photos in this. That's really what is the bulk of what's in today's release. Many more pictures showing Jeffrey Epstein and his lifestyle, including his former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Also, former President Bill Clinton is in a number of these photographs. He's traveling with Ghislaine Maxwell in one of these pictures. They appear to be in a foreign country. There's another photograph of them in a swimming pool. And then there are another several photos of the former president with women whose faces are redacted. Now, former President Clinton is not accused of any wrongdoing in relation to this Jeffrey Epstein relationship that he had. And these are undated photos, so we don't know when these pictures were taken of the former president. A lot of what we have seen today, two separate images, include sexual innuendo or nudity. And I just want to note, too, that these photographs that we've seen today do not seem to include any photos that we've seen so far of President Trump.
The DOJ, as you said, makes clear that what they're releasing today is really only part of what they have, more to come. Still, what appears to be missing so far?
So we're looking for more of those grand jury documents. Of course, that is key and what many members of Congress have been asking for over the last few months and years. We're also looking for any more photos and There's also a list that some members of Congress say may have some of these sexual accusers who may have committed acts against these minors. There's potentially a list in there of those names. So those are the things we're looking for. But the Attorney General Todd Blanche said that they are going to release these in the coming weeks. So we will be going through this for potentially weeks to come.
And Liz, as you well know, the Trump administration initially resisted releasing these documents. Remind us how we got here.
Well, the document released today comes after Congress passed and President Trump signed a law last month requiring the Department of Justice to do so.
The law also required fast compliance. DOJ was supposed to make the information public by December 19, 2025. First, DOJ allegedly redacted the names of senders and recipients in multiple email exchanges involving Epstein and disturbing material connected to young women. Second, DOJ allegedly redacted names of co-defendants, co-conspirators, and people included in internal department communications. Third, DOJ allegedly withheld certain materials mentioning President Trump, including FBI interview notes connected to allegations involving Epstein and Trump. Fourth, DOJ allegedly failed to review or produce foreign language materials. Fifth, DOJ allegedly failed to publish redaction logs, which would explain what was withheld and why. That last point is crucial. A redaction log is what allows the public, journalists, and the court to understand the government's reasoning. Without it, DOJ can hide information behind black bars without giving a meaningful explanation. And Judge Sullivan was not persuaded that DOJ would suffer any real harm from being ordered to follow the law.
Hours after this story broke today, the Justice Department responded to questions of where these documents are, saying, as with all documents flagged by the public, the department is currently reviewing files within that category of production. Should any document be found to have been improperly tagged in the review process and is responsive to the act, meaning the law that forced them to publish all of this, the department will, of course, publish it consistent with that law. My source tonight is California Congressman Dave Min, who is a Democrat on the House Oversight Committee. And thank you for being here. When you hear that response from the Justice Department, do you believe that's sufficient?
Thanks so much for having me, Caitlin. And the answer is no, it's not. They are not responding to the law. And at this point, I think it appears clearer and clearer every day that they are knowingly violating and willfully violating the law that we passed, that Donald Trump signed into law, requiring them to turn over every responsive document. And I want to be clear, just to clarify two things that I think you alluded to. One, Donald Trump is accused of sexually assaulting a child in those memos that you mentioned. Two, that it's not just a few dozen documents that are not being turned over. Fully half of the documents that we're aware of, some 3 million documents, have not been turned over by the DOJ. They claim they fully responded, and yet we've found over and over again, and I can tell you that oversight Democratic staff have confirmed what you have found, that these documents are missing. They were not turned over, even though they were very clearly responsive to the questions that we asked. And this appears to be part of a very broad cover-up. And you may remember back to last May, when Pam Bondi reportedly told Donald Trump he was in the Epstein files. After that, there were a lot of reports that DOJ attorneys were being asked to go redact documents, to hide documents, to remove documents from the files that had Donald Trump's name. So we're definitely continuing to look at this, but it appears that the DOJ is willfully violating the law.
Yeah, and of course, an interview or a witness statement, it doesn't mean that it happened. I mean, you can read through these documents. Yep. There's a lot in there. But in terms of what should be published in accordance with the law that you passed, and these haven't been, I mean, do you believe that they're intentionally breaking that law, or do you think it's because, which is what we've heard from DOJ, they had so much to publish, it was such a compressed time frame, that's the issue here? Yeah.
And so just to give you a quick heads up on my background, I was a federal enforcement attorney to start my career at the SEC. I have spent many, many hours doing this type of document review and management and looking things through. And at this point, I do not believe that this is just a delay in turning the documents over. The fact that so many Donald Trump related documents have not been turned over, that his name's been repeatedly redacted, matches a lot of the reports that we heard that they were trying to cover this up. And at this point, I think, look, everybody's entitled to their day in court, whether that's Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Les Wexner, anybody else.
The court made clear that there is no legitimate harm to the government when a judge orders it to comply with federal status and the Constitution. On the other hand, there is a powerful public interest in making sure government agencies obey the laws that govern them. The Attorney General asked for a 7-day stay to consider emergency appellate review. DOJ also asked for a much longer 60-day stay to decide whether further appeals might be necessary. The court rejected those requests. Why? Because according to Judge Sullivan, the Attorney General had already conceded he was in violation of the Act. That is where this ruling becomes so important. This is not just about one lawsuit. It is about whether the Justice Department can ignore a transparency law passed by Congress, withhold information from the public, redact names without proper explanation, and then expect the courts to look the other way. Judge Sullivan's answer was no. The law say transparency. The public demanded transparency. Victims deserve transparency. And now a federal judge has ordered DOJ to either release the information or justify every refusal. That is the legal bottom line. And that is why this ruling matters.